Before we start building effects, it's worth taking a look at the engine itself and understanding how it's set up. Let's start with step-based effects.
Going to open the effect editor by double tapping effect, and by default it's going to open me into the default effects that EOS has built in as its stock effects. The default effect here is effect 901. We don't want to deal with that right now. We want to create our own effect. So to create a new effect, all I have to do is type in the number of the effect that I want to create. Because we are in blind, typing something that doesn't exist will automatically create it for me, and it's going to prompt me with this screen of what type of effect do I want to make. I want to start with a step-based effect, so I'm going to go ahead and tap on step-based, and it will bring up the step-based table here for me. Looking at the table, starting from the left, I have a step number column. All the step numbered column does is it gives me a unique number by which this step is referenced. It doesn't mean anything other than just the number of the step in this table. So if I want to go back later and affect a particular step, I can call it by its step number. The next column I have is channels. Step-based effects are the only type of effects that allow me to embed channel selections within that type of effect. And over to the right, I have some timing parameters and some other functions that talk about how the effects work. But let's go ahead and let's start by adding a channel selection to this. So first thing I'm going to do is I am going to create 4 steps. I have soft key down here at the bottom. Soft key 1 is step. I'm going to go ahead and type step 1 through 4. And it's going to create 4 steps for me. Next, I have those 4 steps selected with that gold box. I can just arrow over, and I can add channels to this table. I can go through and I can add 1 step at a time, or I can add them in bulk. I know I want to use my 4 backlight movers, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to tap on my backlight mover group, group 95, which is all backs. And it's going to actually take that channel selection and it's going to fan them amongst the 4 steps. So now I have 4 steps with 4 channels. Moving over to the right, I have step time, in time, dwell time, and decay time. These are the timing values that are associated with these particular steps.
The step time is the total amount of time that this step is going to be active before it moves on to the next step. The in time is how long it takes to fade into this step. The dwell time is how long it holds on the step. And the decay time is how long it takes to fade out of this step.
Next to that, we have our on state and our off state.
Step-based effects are state-based. So a step is either active or it is inactive. When it is active, it will use the on state. When it is inactive, it is going to use the off state.
So for example, here in step 1, channel 121 is going to take 1 second to fade up. It's going to hold for 0 seconds, and then it's going to take 1 second to fade down. What values are going to fade up to? It's going to fade up to 100 or full. And then when this step is no longer active after it fades down, what is this light going to do? It is going to fade to 0 because that's what we have as our off state. So right now we have 4 steps where the lights are fading between 0 and full. Let's go ahead and live and let's see what this looks like. We'll go back into live. I'm going to grab my group of backs and I'm going to activate that effect, effect 801. And there we go. We can see that it's running on these backlights. Another way I could have run this effect, I'm going to go ahead and stop that effect by hitting stop effect enter, which will stop all of my running effects.
When I program, I tend to use a lot of direct selects. I call it McDonald's programming. I will take 1 backlights with a side of effects, please. But I can also do it all directly from the keypad. So for example, I can say group 95, effect 801, enter. And it's going to do the same thing. It's going to apply that effect to those channels. So now I'm going to go back into the effects editor and we can take a look at how some other parameters in the effects editor will affect this running effect. So right now, you can see we have the smooth fade. It's fading up to 100 and then it's immediately fading down. What if we wanted them to pop on and then fade off? We would need to change the in time. So in this case, I'm going to do it through all steps by selecting steps 1 through 4. I'm going to change my in time to 0. And notice now, instantly, they're popping on and they're fading off. They're popping on and they're fading off. Because my in time now takes 0 seconds to fade on, it holds for 0 seconds, and then it fades off. So as soon as something turns on, it immediately starts fading off. What if I want them to hold for a second and then fade off? Well, I can do that with my dwell time
I change my dwell time to 1, now you can see they pop on for a second, hold, fade off. Pop on, fade off. Pop on, fade off. It's also worth noting, however, here, that notice that there's some overlap between the steps where there wasn't before. That is because our step time is set to 1. So in this case, our step time is shorter than the total between our dwell time and our decay time. Right? Our dwell time plus our decay time is 2 seconds. Our step time is 1 second, which means that these are actually overlapping by 1 second. Whereas notice if I change my dwell back to 0, they don't overlap at all. As soon as one finishes, the next starts. If I wanted to do the opposite and I wanted them to fade on and snap off, I can change my in time to 1, my decay time to 0, and now they're going to fade on and snap off. Again, they're not overlapping because my step time is equivalent to the total of my in time, my dwell time, and my decay time. If I wanted these to overlap, I could just come in here and very easily change my step time. Say I change it to half a second, and now they're going to actually overlap by half a second. And you can see that all the changes I make here to my step time actually affect my cycle time. So if I come in here and I change my cycle time to 4 seconds, it will proportionally increase all the other timing values in this effect. So notice that it increases the step time to 1 second each, which equals at 4, and it's also increasing my in time proportionally.